even if they win all offense from the K, you're still going to vote affirmative for two reasons. First is the warming impact, and second is that case is a step in the right direction. I'll get to the step in the right direction, step on the K flow, but I'll start the warming stuff right here on the case flow. First, he sent across the tickle card. He says that by 2030, unless we reduce emissions by 40%, that we're all going to die because of things like the melting of the polar ice caps is releasing even more CO2 into the atmosphere, and which is then going to the soil and increasing the amount of plants we're able to grow. And the collapsing ecosystems, it means that we're not going to be able to sustain the amount of life that we have right now on Earth. So that means assured extinction by 2030. Unless we take concrete action right now, solve it, which they can see that the case is able to do that. To do that by then, because things like market forces incentivize it. They make a couple arguments on case. First is that the apocalyptic rhetoric leads to force, but the Beals card will answer this. The Beals card will answer this, and also do my analysis on the step in the right direction stuff here. Beals says that fit is key to getting people more involved in nature, and getting people more involved with the energy sector, because if we then start to produce our own energy and realize how it affects the nature around us, which will check back against us, because we won't have to learn from the state how we affect the environment around us. We then decide for ourselves and have our own agency, which means that we don't follow the apocalyptic rhetoric anymore, which means that that will never lead to force. And also that'll also mean that the plan is a step in the right direction, because people are more involved in there, they're more connected to the nature around them. That is exactly what the alternative calls for. It calls for people that are more in tune with being and they're more appreciative of the nature around them. So that'll check back against any forms of the link debate, and because the people there. Because the people are more appreciative of the nature around them, and even if they want to link that we still create some forms of technological thought, that the fact is that we create a better form of technological thought. Sure, we still use things like market forces to incentivize green technology, but the fact is that because we're using that for green technology and not things like mass violence or pollution or polluters that damage the atmosphere, is that it's a better form of technological thought than the status quo, which means that it'd be able to fit under the alternative, that a fit policy would still be able to be passed under the alternatives. This will mean a couple things on the K flow that I'll get to there later. But on the bottom, they make this always the case argument, but there's no analysis on this, so it's just crossed my mind. I might also from the tickle flow. Then that's the reason why you should prefer the case right now, even if we don't win any of the offense on the K flow. Going to the framework stuff, I only need to win these knowledge claims arguments for first extent across the Carlson-Williams card. Carlson-Williams card. It'll check back against their offense, because even though we work within the state, the fact that they say the state is flexible, so we're then able to change the way that we educate our people and the way that we learn about these things, and then they're rejecting the K that we're stuck under that form of education. So that means that when we work with the state, that we're then able to change that, so that'll check back against any of the offense they win to this. And then I sent across the Spania card that. This is what's going to win us at this education debate. He says that we need to work within the state, otherwise, because if we withdraw, that'll lead to things like state co-option, because we're just sitting outside the White House protesting while everyone else is inside determining how the world works and making bills and things like that, which means that the alternative education isn't able to solve for anything, because we don't actually learn about how the government works. That with our education, we learn about how the government works, how to work within the state, and which would then lead to things like how to make effective policies, which is exactly what the affirmative is. That'll check back against any other education claims. And then on the bottom they make this leads to miscalc stuff. But if we win the utilitarianism flow, this will check back against us then. That calculations are probably good to stop things like oncoming extinctions in the first place, but also crossed by the Cross-Williams card above that the government education is flexible and able to take on new forms, so that we get that the affirmative is key to changing the type of education and the bad types of calculations that they make in the first place go onto the war game. So I don't need to win a lot here. The fact is that because they give no analysis of how their alternative from Heidegger is able to solve for this, that means that these impacts are inevitable in the first place. So if anything, you should still prefer the case over this. Also because they give no time for the impacts, so you should still prefer warming. But on the bottom, they said that makes our impacts inevitable. Across my analysis from before about how the changing state education means that we're not always gonna make these bad prediction claims, and that we change that type of education to make it better. Especially if we win the ontology debate, that'll do on the K flow. And then on the bottom, makes sense across that education is key to agency. That if we win, that we're a better form of education. That we create better people. They're not better people, but we create better. That we create people that are better able to use their agency and action to actually go out in the world and solve these things. So that means we'll win this flow in the first place. We'll win that purely in the education arguments. Go on to the Heidegger flow itself. First, cross by my analysis about how the plan is a step in the right direction. On the alternative, that means that first that means that the perm would be able to solve this. Their only arguments are about the justification. Their only arguments about how the perm wouldn't be able to solve are about the justification for the plan, not about the actual plan itself. So that means if we win that plan, action can fit under the alternative. That's the reason why they would both be able to happen in conjunction. The only other arguments they make is that we need to present it in a way of being with the world. But the fact is that if the judge votes to the alternative, that sure he can accept the way of being but the environment is still collapsing on around him. We need a concrete action that is able to solve this. So that means that if we win a chance that a plan creates some better forms of thought than the status quo and is able to solve for global warming, that's the reason why you're going to vote for us in the first place. And then on the bottom next they make this intrinsic perm argument, but first it's a new argument, and second to reject the argument, not the team. That's not a reason to reject it in the first place. And then they make these link arguments, but my analysis about how the plan is a step in the right direction will check against these. Then on the ontology flow on the bottom, extend across the Robbins chart, he says that first we need to actually have people here on the planet before we can do things like think about ontology, because we can't think if we're all dead. And second is that facing extinction is key to change our ontology, because when we face our mortality and see how precious the life on Earth is, that'll then lead us to appreciate the lives around us and focus on things like ethics. So the plan is probably still a prerequisite.